I see a more and more increasing trend of people and groups and all sorts of communities prohibiting the use of certain words. And to a certain extent, I find it a bit funny, but at the second time, I'd rather remind people that don't play too much with the meaning you have invested so much in learning and creating. See, all the languages that we use are a set of meanings. They're a set of, let's say, rules that we all abide to. Because when you say a certain word, everyone who speaks the same language, well, theoretically and practically respects the rule, aka knows that that meaning means a certain thing. When you use words that have had throughout history acquired connotations that do not fit some people or lower some, or let's say belittle other people, or well, have caused pain, in the end, remind yourself one truth of life. See, in life, a word or meaning does not mean or equate anything. It is a set of images that you may see. See, it's true. In Romanian, it is said when someone sneezes while you or they say something, it is considered to be true. But things aside, see, when you look at images, you typically just see the image. When you hear sounds, you just hear the sounds. When you pronounce something or when you hear something spoken by someone, see, those are only sounds that you hear. The meaning is deep within our minds. And unfortunately, we are so encrusted, we are so programmed to follow blindly our language that we end up thinking that the meaning and the intentions of others causes us hurt. See, your ancestors may definitely have been hurt by some words, but the point is, do you really want to turn the others into wizards? Because I've been telling in other videos indirectly that wizardry and, in a way, magic kind of exist. Imagine that someone speaks a word and you react so hideously to it, and the problem is you're making that person a wizard. See, a wizard means someone who does a huge amount of things. Oftentimes, it may be interpreted as, almost godlike powers, right? And they do something with little to no effort, right? As compared, let's say, to common human strengths, mental capabilities, psychological, emotional aspects, and the such. See, if you say the N word nowadays, let's say in a podcast or somewhere that people, millions of people listen, most likely you're gonna piss off at least 50% of those. Doesn't that make you a wizard? Right? Because whoever angers you controls you. If I only need one word to piss off half of the planet, well, it means I'm in control of those people, at least for a certain period of time. See, our ancestors have lived in this illusion because, well, the point is, victimization really distorts one's reality. For hundreds, if not thousands of years, people who have lived in misery and pain obviously have resorted to, the idea of victimization, hoping that they would draw some attention upon themselves. Now, when we look at things, the problem with victimization is that it distorts one's reality. It makes them feel more and more attached to this idea, and then in time they become entitled to whatever other things they, let's say, entrench into, or let's say, become attached to. So if someone becomes obsessed with the idea that they must be helped by the others, well, they will become entitled in time because as they will see that people literally don't care much about themselves and let alone about the others, they will indirectly or directly even realize that people won't move a finger to help them. So they will become, in an attempt to lie themselves that everything is good, they will become more and more entitled to things, right? To people being obliged to help them or people having to suffer in their name or well probably even worse, sadists and masochists, they're also born down these roots, right? They need such roots to grow further and further and become more entrenched into, well, their new personality. When it comes to meaning, see, when you prohibit meaning, In an ignorant world, anything that you prohibit is never a good thing, because when people invest all their energy into their misery, prohibiting something miserable will mean their minds will become even more perverted. This is the best thing to do in case you want to control them, right? In case you want to make their minds even more perverted. Like when people are perverted, let's say sexually, creating books, writings, even let's say using metacultures like religion to try to prevent that or prevent it in a forceful way, you're going to make people even more aggressive towards that. You're going to make people even more thwarted towards that, even more perverted to that. Remember when you were a child and your parents would prohibit you from doing something? Your childlike curiosity would make you want to do that even more, right? The same applies in such cases as well. When we move even further, imagine that we're already living in times where you're kind of disallowed from saying all sorts of words because, someone might get offended. See, if you don't offend people, you're doing something wrong. The problem is, a lot of people understand offending others as being toxic. See, the point is, don't offend people by being toxic. You can offend them in a certain way, in such that you only shake them from their ignorance. The problem with a lot of people is when they live in such environments where nobody speaks certain words because everyone's going to get offended, they are not living in an environment, they are living in a mental prison. Because when even words can hurt you, well, it doesn't mean that. Words cannot hurt you. You have just embraced this idea that if someone says something, you're going to play the role of the victim, right? It's just victimization. Words cannot harm you. If you allow them, yes, because you have attached yourself to the idea that if someone speaks a certain word, well, it means something bad towards you, right? Why would you care if you are a black person that someone says the N word? It doesn't matter whether they're Asian or white people or whatever, right? A lot of people will obviously say harmful words because, first and foremost, they are simply wounded on the inside. And when people are miserable, well, everyone else must also suffer, right? Because misery loves company. So just leave them to bark, right? Let them bark their own words. Let them spew their own toxicity, because when you invest into their own toxicity, you're infecting yourself with that, which is a disrespect. You're lowering your energy, you're ruining your mood and your life. You're resting how many hours you're resting per day to have the energy for that day. And now you're wasting it for some nonsensical people. Why would you even care much about that? Yes, there was a lot of negative connotation with a lot of words that nowadays can be misinterpreted even. But the point is, those were the traumas of our ancestors. That is how much they knew. That was their maximum potential. We can make a better world by simply not um, reacting to things anymore. Sure, if people want to be aggressive physically and they want to trigger you, well, simply leave and let them be. But if they still persist, well, in that case, they didn't want to hurt your emotions, they wanted to hurt you physically. And, well, we all know you have to do whatever it is needed, because if someone crosses your boundaries in a physical way, most likely they're not gonna do it to give you a hug, especially if they did it without your consent, right? If you let someone hug you, well, that's a different point. But if someone crosses, let's say, your boundaries without telling you or warning you, I'm telling you, they're not gonna give you a hug, right? They're probably gonna have more, I don't know, probably they want to do some slander, or they want to humiliate you, or they want to hurt you, whatever it may be. It depends on the situation. So imagine that nowadays you want to go to a therapist. Let's say you have unfortunately gone through a traumatic experience. Let's say you have been assaulted, right? Sexually assaulted. And you go to the therapist, and you're depressed, you're devastated emotionally, and they're one of those neo woke, whatever they are called, and you tell them, hey, I've got a problem, how can I solve it? And they say, how may I assist you? And you tell them that I have been raped, and they say, we do not speak the R word in here. So it's like, okay, I have been sexually assaulted. We're not using the word assault in here. And it's like, well, the sexually what? How can you pronounce yourself? Because, well, suddenly you're not allowed to speak much because, well, a lot of bozos simply won't allow you to speak certain words. And it's like, well, I have been, I don't know, you've tried to find another synonym, right? And you say, I don't know, you say sexually harassed. And it's like, no, 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 we're not using the S word in here. It's like, I have been harassed. And well, we don't use that either because, well, harassing is not a good thing because they are inventing a new world for their own madness. So, in their world, they have a mouth, but they don't want to use it because, hey, everything that you may say obviously can, offend someone. And, that miserable life only becomes a competition of who triggers such pseudo hurts faster, right? It's a race who shows more victimization faster. It's not necessarily that they're truly hurt by a word. You have to show yourself as a subhuman almost if a word can hurt you. See, you're reacting to something that most likely other people used to suffer. You took it as an example because you need to vampirize a bit of attention the more you feel abandoned, the more you feel hurt and disrespected, disregarded by society as well. So when you see that other people are victimizing and they're receiving attention, everyone sooner or later in deeper levels of misery, they will think, why not play that game as well? And there are a lot of people who will join in when someone victimizes. They will join in as well. Not because they care about the one who victimizes, but that's an invitation for them to victimize as well. And in time, this becomes a race. Who victimizes more, who victimizes faster. I've seen such environments. I've, in a way, been part of one, so I'm not inviting people to live too much down that lane. So the point is, don't make use necessarily of words because, well, yes, a lot of people can flare up, but when people are miserable, they will flare up out of everything. You may just end up being the wrong, person in the wrong place because there are a lot of miserable people who just aggressively wish to impose a certain point on others, right? Like there will be people who will actually speak words that are so-called offensive, and they will speak it so often expecting that you will accidentally speak it, right? They will even speak it while you are thinking about your ideas, thinking that they will thwart your mind. When you're thinking about something, you're trying to find your words, you almost found that word, and they speak a certain word, you also speak it. Not because you want it, but you heard it recently, so it may happen that. Well, some of those people in their misery, they might even record you and then use that piece of, so-called evidence against you. And you know how much backlash people can get because when people let their emotions control them, well, you're kind of a slave of your own energies, right? And those energies aren't even yours. You've seen those things in other people. You've seen your parents probably constantly moan that when something bad happened, it's God's fault, it's angels' fault, it's fate's fault, it's the government's fault, it's the authorities' fault. It's always someone else's blame in most of the miserable people's lives. When you're surrounded by so many adults, well, as a child and adolescent, obviously you're going to take it as an example, and it will become slowly and surely an indistinguishable reality for you, unfortunately. And the more people behave and function in the same way, it's going to be hard to distinguish their reality from the true reality that you were born with. Always ask yourself who you were before seeing everyone's behaviors and pieces and things that their behaviors, they're being pissed off, they're being this, they're being that, and imposing their own shit upon you. Because ultimately, when you are born, you didn't have any opinion, you didn't have any attachment, you didn't have anything, and that's why you are happy. Now, unfortunately, the more people think and function around you, the more of a prison it is. Because you're going to think that those behaviors, or even that behavior, if everyone functions the exact same way, is the only behavior that can be. When you're out of that environment and you meet people who function completely different, obviously you're going to feel distorted. And that's not a pleasant experience. I'm going to assure you of that. Been there, done that. So hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Take care. And this being said, Ferenc Board signing out.